Iangalie. Tuko kwa sasa tayari imeenda live, so siwezi kuuza. Tafuta mbio bana. Kuna niko live sasa hivi. Enda FB. Enda kwa Facebook. Indeed, to our viewers who are joining us, we are live from Nairobi, and today we are discussing something regarding on how the disabilities and challenges they normally face through when they are having their, when they are looking for their daily living. Specifically, we are doing something on Let's Talk Business, and today we are so happy to be joined by the one of the disabled person who is Aska Josephine, who is the CEO of Federations of Women's Empowerment of Kenya. And we are so much glad to discuss some of the various issues and challenges they normally face through to ensure that they earn the living. So for instance, when you are carrying out the business, you might not be the same person or as the same person who is disabled. Your mentalities, or in other words, it might be very difficult for you or for disabled person to be like the normal person. For instance, they might be having some various challenges. Specifically, they go in various, very antagonistic manner in which they get some stigmatizations and various things normally occur to them. So we are here to discuss some of the challenges they normally pass through to ensure that also we share some of their details with those people. For instance, stigmatization is one of them. So what normally happens? What are we supposed to do to ensure that we get up with them so that we take them as normal persons and we leave them in a peaceful manner? So today I'm joined by Aska. He will be letting us know what is going on and what normally happens. So I have the sign interpreter called Sylvia. He will be giving us more information on what Aska will be telling us through the signs, and Sylvia will be interpreting for us in words. So join me. I'm live from Nairobi, and this is Equatorial TV. For those people who are joining us live from wherever you are watching us, you can send in your comments and tell us where you're watching and what we're supposed to do. Drop in your comments and give us more insight about what you think it must be done and fully of what we should be do. So welcome, Madam CEO Aska Josephine to Equatorial TV.
Thank you. As you've also heard, my name is Aska Josephine, and this is my sign name. For the deaf who are watching, this is my sign name. Why? Because each of us always has a sign name. Why sign names? Why? That could be the question you're asking yourselves. You people who are hearing, you have names that you're given by the parents at birth. So you can be called and then you can hear your name being called. But for the deaf, we are visual people. So we give each other sign names so that when you're joining the deaf community, that is what you have. So that's my sign name. And my interpreter, that's her sign name, Sylvia. So for now, I'd like to, as I continue to narrate about what my organization does, it's called FedWin. And what we do is we advocate for the rights of deaf girls and women, and we focus on gender-based violence and sexual reproductive health. as well as economic empowerment, governance and civic education, and many other things, thematic areas that we focus on. Our office is based on Eagle House, 4th floor, room number 5.
So indeed, to our viewers, don't be mesmerized when you see me picking the microphone and also talking, because we're supposed to have the sign interpreters. And as I told you, we are joined by the CEO, Madam Josephine, who is the CEO for FEDWIN, that is Federations of Women Empowerment Kenya. And he also agitates for the rights and other things for women, for them to ensure that they are where they are, specifically disabled. Not only the women's, but disabled. So as we said early, if you're joining us, I'm Kaka JUMA, live from Nairobi, Kenya, and with the CEO, Madam Josephine Asker. I said you can tell us where you're watching from, if it is in Haiti, Australia, Canada, Cairo, Madagascar, South Sudan, or here in Kenya. You're most welcome, and feel free to share your comments on what you're supposed to see and what you're supposed to know about. So here we have the Madam Asker. So Asker, I wish to get first who you are. Are you the mother or who you are? Then how is life first before we get to our really point, so that we get to know who is Asker and what do you do apart from being the CEO? Who are you?
All right. As I said, I am Asker. This is me. I'm deaf, but I wasn't born deaf. I became deaf later on in life at about 6 years of age. I had the sickness known as mumps, and then I suffered a hearing loss, and that is how I became deaf. And then I went to school for the deaf. I learned sign language there. And also myself as Asker, I think I was born as an activist, because when I was in school for the deaf in primary school, there was no problem. But when I finished my primary levels, I could not go to high school like others. Why was this? Because there was no high school for the deaf people. And that is where my activeness was born without knowing. It just happened automatically. And that is another story for another day. But yes, I am an activist. I'm also a mother of 3 beautiful children, 2 boys and 1 girl. And I really love my family. Yes. So, some people might be surprised. Oh, deaf give birth. Yes, we do. We have children. Don't assume that they're deaf. Would you believe that all my beautiful children are hearing children? They went to high school, they went to university, they're there. In addition, if you see another deaf person family that they have deaf children, don't perceive that as a negative attitude, because maybe it could have been a historical DNA, because we don't have genetics in my family. That is why my children are hearing. And if you see deaf children, it means it's genetics. Hope that is understood. So I started my activist, as I said, when I was in school, because when I finished primary school, I got an opportunity to go to high school, a mainstream high school, which means I was a deaf first woman to enter a mainstream high school. And then the government realized, oh, the deaf people do need high school. And they started establishing high schools for the deaf, which are now available. Even universities, you can go now as a deaf person, and I'm happy I was part of the pioneering for that. So after high school, I faced a lot of challenges, because when I finished school, I had to look for a job, but I could not access jobs because many certificates which I owned were fake. Because when I would knock the doors, I'll go to the college, they'll say, you're deaf. This is what they will do. I felt that was very discriminative, because that's what they were showing me, as if I had no right to access education at the college level. And I really felt bad. And I joined the Kenya National Association of the Deaf, which was very new. So together with the KNAD, we were advocating for accessibility and the respect for deaf women and people, so that they have the rights to health, education, and other matters. And now, even now, the education is available. So I've been an activist. Being an activist is in my blood. If you want to make me annoyed, hurt another deaf person or hurt another person with a disability, that time you'll know me. At Aska is not a smiling person like you're saying. But like now, yes, I'm smiling and I'm okay. But if I feel that you're infringing on a person who's deaf's right, I will explain to you so that you can be aware and understand that we persons with disability, who are we, what do we need, what we need to overcome, and all these other things. I will explain to you so that you're aware. Why? Because we need life to be accessible to all so that we can be equal to others without discrimination when it comes to disability. That is me.
Indeed, it is a good presentations, and whoever you're watching us, this is Equatorial TV, and we are live from Nairobi, where we are doing something on living disabilities and challenges they normally go through when they are undertaking what you call business. Specifically, you've heard of several challenges, and I think as we move on, we will be looking and tackling several of them. But now Aska is facing, in her life, she has faced really some embarrassment. And in several or in any continent or any country or in any society, there's what we call rejection. To now, Aska, my point is, how did you manage to get into the society first? Your parents, did the parent accept? Because you're not born with this disease and you're no longer deaf, you're just a normal person. How was and what was the reactions from the parents and the society within? Then number two, let's look at stigmatizations and both job and in various public or in various occasions or places. How do you normally go with it before we come to our main points now, economic? Kindly, if you don't mind, share with us all, how did the parent took this initiative when you were the deaf, when now those diseases made you to be where you are? Then now going to school, you've told us that it was the first school ever. You're the first woman or deaf person to join that school. Which year was that, and what? How did the perceptions? What were the perceptions from the angle when you joined the school and the family at large?
Thank you so much, Kaka Juma. So about my parents, when I suffered a hearing loss, because my parents are Christians, very saved. So when I suffered a hearing loss and became deaf, they were very shocked. They cried, they were asking God, where did we go wrong? What was our mistake? Because we are worshiping you, now our daughter is deaf, where is the problem? And they tried to take me to hospital. But my mother, to tell you the truth, my parents really love me a lot. Yes, they are rested right now, rested in peace, but they loved me a lot. So when we'll go to the hospital, because we'll go to Kenyatta Hospital, they'll assess, they'll clean my ears, they'll do all these tests, and they'll say she's deaf. That is a conclusive matter. And the parents will say, she went to sleep hearing and woke up suffering a hearing loss. It was hard to believe. It was very hard for them. I'm the fifth born in our family and the last of the girls. So my father also took me back home. He didn't know where to take me in terms of school. He did not know whether there's a school for the deaf. They did not have this information and knowledge. We were living in Siaya. So my father kept me in the house, but the problem started with the neighbors, you know, because they'll joke and say, that family, those parents are always worshiping God. They're pretending they are saved. Now look, God has shown their sins. Very clearly we can see it through the daughter. She's deaf now. So they'll really say that and make fun of my parents in that way. And my parents would really cry a lot. They'll even bring a pastor to pray for me, to miraculous healing. I even got tired of kneeling down before the pastor, the Bible being hit on my head so that I can start hearing, but I'm not hearing. But because of love, you know, sometimes even my parents, you know, parents do anything for their children, right? Because people will say, we need to look for a witchcraft doctor so that he can help. And my father was like, no, I'm a Christian. A witchcraft doctor. My father said, okay, let me try. because my father tried it. Let me tell you the truth. They brought the witch doctor, the village doctor. I was cut, I was put something, rubbed medicine here and there. I really suffered. There was a lot of pain. I suffered until finally I told my father, please, no, I don't want. I have suffered enough. And my father said, okay, let's stop this herbal traditional medicine because I'm not miraculously getting healed. Let me be deaf. My parents were really stressed because what I went through, those doctors, I don't want to say because some doctors are really evil. Because they really did, even some people take advantage and you can even be raped because if you're a parent, please accept your child with a disability the way they are. And I remember one auntie of mine, she used to live a far place from us. She came to visit and she was married near a school for the deaf. So she had that information. So when she went to church, she came back and found, oh yeah, my niece is now deaf. So they told my parents, don't worry, because there's a school for the deaf. Let me go and ask her and she can go to that school. So my father was very surprised. Oh, so there's hope. And my auntie said yes. So I was taken to school. And I remember it was a holiday on the 20th of October, which was Kenyatta Day those days. And they took me to school. And when I entered the school, it was a missionary school, and the sisters accepted yes. All they did was the conditions because it's a Catholic, a missionary school. So they told my father that your family, you're not Catholics, but this girl needs to change and become a Catholic. So for her to be integrated into the school. So my father had no option. And he was a seventh day. And this is a Catholic school, so the importance was my daughter to get that education. So my father accepted me to join the school, and that is how my name, Josephine, came about. Yes. So from there, so after primary school, in the final exams, so that we could go to Mumia's vocational schools for the deaf. And that time we had no exams for class 7. So after there was no final exams by the government. So what I did was the exams and I entered the vocational school. And then my eldest brother looked at my documents and letter that I'm supposed to join a vocational school. My brother was in form 6, A levels, told me, no, ask a vocational. Tell dad that you need to go to O levels, form 1. And me, I did no idea what is this Form 1 my brother is telling me about. So I told my father, I want to join Form 1. And my father looked at me and kept quiet. So when my father took me to join the vocational school, the father told the principal that my daughter wants to go to join O levels, Form 1. But the principal said there are not schools there because what they're doing is, you have to pick a course. There's typing, there's secretarial. I refused all those courses. I said, me, I'm going to Form 1. I was repeating, I want to go to Form 1. And the sister there said that everybody is in school. Just join for 1 week, pick a course, and then see. And the sister there was from the States. So what they did is that they had a meeting and they allowed me to just sit as a private candidate just for 1 year to learn and see what's happening. And then if I do the exam and I pass, then they'll look for me an O-level school for me. And 3 other girls joined me, so we were 4 girls in total. And people were surprised because, English, mathematics, science, all these subjects I was not aware about because history, geography, I was very surprised. And that is the day I started learning those subjects. I learned, and the same year we did the exams, and we were private candidates. We did the exam, and luckily, we thank God because we performed very well. And then the challenge now is the school. Where are the schools? Because we were called to different schools because our documents never showed us we were deaf. So when we arrived at the school, they're like, you're deaf. They kicked us out. So we came back to the same school and the sister said, let me look for a neighboring school, St. Mary's Girls High School, so that we can be accommodated there. It was like a pilot project to see, okay, these girls are deaf, then they could open up a way for others. So we joined the school, and remember, it's a mainstream school because for the 4 years I was there, I was teaching them. There was no interpreters at that time. So I was learning how through reading the books, the textbooks. I will sit near a student who's hearing, will help me to write notes. They'll show this is what we are doing. This is the page you are at. For 4 years, that's what we are doing. And at the final exams, we really performed well because we said it's not years that are making you pass. It is your brain, the motivation, your strength, that you know that you want to succeed. One can always succeed regardless. And that is what happened. And later, after that, the government saw, oh, there is a need for high schools for the deaf. But again, when accessing the college now was also a challenge because when I applied to become a teacher, college, they called me. And then when I entered the college, they said, you're deaf. They kicked me out. I gave up and I said, I'm going back to advocacy platform right now with my guns blazing because I need to advocate so that ways can be open for other deaf who are coming for me, and after me, they can have the schools available.
Indeed, it is so much interesting and saddening stories, as you can get us from where we are and how Aska managed to be where she is. I want just to thank our interpreter who is doing a very marvelous job to ensure that we get indeed direct and live interpretation from Aska to Sylvia. Thank you so much, Sylvia, and Aska, good presentation. So for those viewers who are watching us, I'm seeing your comments, various comments dropping in. I know I'll read it soon, but before I do that, I just wish to give you what is going on, the disabled or people with disabilities in our society today. We have some challenges when it comes to economic and other things that normally bring something on table. And we have realized that during this COVID-19, we are some of the challenges. So from there, we pick from our points. Now, Aska, we have observed that most of, let me say, all sectors of economic have been collapsed, or it is under upside. So you realize that you might not be doing what you used to do. First, how did COVID-19 hit you, and how did you manage? Keeping in mind that your parents, you have those people who depends on you, and you are a mother, and you have to do something for you to equip yourself. Keeping in mind that Nairobi is supposed to do everything to ensure that you pay rent, you get food on table, and how do you manage yourself first? And through that, the society at large, we realize that somebody like you, they might take it just not serious because they see you as a person, let me not use that word, but how do you manage to cope up with other? Because I've seen you have advocated for various people, and right now I've seen the federations of women are picking in each and every time you have workshops. How do you go, and how did you manage to fight or to keep yourself where you are until right now during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you so much, Kaka Juma, because when COVID came, I don't even know where it came from. I thank God for protecting us because this COVID has been a great challenge to us. Because most of us, persons with disabilities, and also more so the deaf, as you look at me, I'm standing over here, I depend on signing and lip reading. And then COVID, the devil of COVID came with conditions, with its own terms and conditions. Masks. Masks. This masks, to tell you the truth, for us, now if you cover your mouth and I cannot lip read what you're telling me, it has really been hard through communication. Maybe I go to the shop, I want bread, I'll say bread, shopkeeper will answer, but because of the mask, I'm there. Until I'll tell you, please, can you turn down your mask? And they don't want, because I've taken down my mask to say bread, and then the shopkeeper moves very far. I'm like, wow. You know, and I felt really discriminated against. Everywhere the deaf people were, we felt discriminated against because of the mask. They were not deaf friendly. But let me tell you about myself, the challenge, how I took up this COVID-19 challenge. I think month of March, right? We had COVID, corona. I'm like, what's this? Because the symptoms were like a flu, a cold. I thought it was normal. You know, it's been there. We've been coughing, we've been getting colds. So what is this? What is the difference? It was hard for me to see that there's a difference. So when work collapsed, because you know, even us guys, we are dependent on funds. Funds were redirected for COVID. So what it was very hard for us to get funds to implement our project for the workshops. It was a very hard condition for us because as an activist, as a mother, I need to manage the organization. I have a family to manage. It was very tough. I just thank my landlord. He never kicked me out of the house. You know, I never found a padlock in the house because I explained times are tough. There is no funds. He was patient to accept. Even my children now were kicked out from school. We stayed home together. We really struggle. Some friends from outside the country will support us with small things, whatever they supported me with, because I will share with my children only. No, because I also have a deaf family who I serve. So I will share whatever I have with them as well. The little I had, we'll share with one another. Some institutions like supermarkets who we've been building a relationship with, they'll donate some food to us. We got that opportunity to share as well. So we will try and see what we could. And somehow we survived. God knows, you know, God knows his people. He never abandoned his children. Up to now, we are here because everything has been going well. But the biggest problem for deaf people with and persons with disability, especially the deaf, is to tell you the truth that our education started very late. So most of our deaf people, they have a challenge with education because even getting a part-time job is what we get, like working in the factory, small jobs here and there. So they were affected by COVID. Companies really let go of some workers because we're the first people to let go of, were the first people. So many deaf people lost their jobs. And these are my family members because there was a lot of stress, depression, because you know they're looking at me as an organization, a person with an organization who can help. But then there are no funds. It was very hard to manage. Up to right now, many have not gone back to work because there is no work, because when they lost their jobs, there was a lot of problems. Some went through stress. There was no counseling. There's no counseling for us. Even as family, gender-based violence, we faced a lot. There was an increment on that because you see now my organization was responsible for that, because if maybe I was the one who was the breadwinner, I'm not bringing any money, gender-based violence was very tough. And also we have deaf mothers who are single women because of certain circumstances. So if you lost your job and you have children, what next? Who will care for them? So even the family will look at them as a burden because it was a very challenge. COVID brought a lot of challenges. Even right now, we have deaf people who are out of school, other persons with disability. We were advocating for equal opportunities to jobs like the others. We are looking for opportunities to be employed because sometimes the boss prefers a person without a disability as compared to one with a disability. So we want to be given that opportunity. So can you imagine if I'm fired from work? We're the first people to be fired and then to be appointed. How now? Because we're the last ones and the first ones to go. So COVID, to tell you the truth, was a very big challenge up to now. We're only hoping that people who have a heart and look at us as others, like the rest without a disability. Because I mean, you're blocking me from work. Yes, I have a hearing loss. Maybe I use crutches to walk, but my mind is there. I'm very active. I am applying because I can. I know I have the capacity to do this job. So we are asking you employers, look at us as a person with disability. Look at me as a person first. Then my disability second. God created me as Asker. My deafness came later. So you look at me as a person and not a disability person. Because we are hardworking. If you're given an opportunity, we are always putting our best because we know that we want to keep working. We will do our very best. A person with disability, whether they have graduated and even apply for a job, let me tell you the truth. Time for being selected, they will be given the last resort options, which is not right, because Constitution 2010 says that 5% are supposed to be reserved for persons with disability. I think the government of Kenya, it's a high time that you think about that, its implementations, so that we can access job opportunities like other people, because persons with disabilities have been really affected with COVID. Many are at home, many have no jobs, many are living in poverty, many cannot even afford 3 meals in one day. So that is very, very challenging to us.
Thank you so much, Aska, for your good presentations and giving us more insight about what it's all about people with a disability. So for those people who are watching us, I'm seeing the comments, I'll read it soon, but keep on dropping the comments so that we get to be in touch. As you watch out, Aska is the CEO, the founder, let's say, is the pioneers of those people who started here schools, that is disability schools here in Kenya, because as you've heard from her, she talked over during their time there was no enough quorum and they did not manage to go to a well of school, but due to what happened, they had to join the normal schools and had to pick up. So they say disability is not an inability. And for those people who are watching us, let's have the rights, let's respect the people with disability so that we also live as there. Let's first take them as a person, then their disabilities according to Aska, let it come later. And if you look at Aska, is a very renowned researcher person who writes research both local and internationally for her to sustain herself. So if you have research, we will ask Aska to give us his social media handles and other things for you to get to be in touch. Also, if you wish to support or do the you bring in your donors to support FedWin, that is FedWin Kenya, or so that it goes globally, you also welcome. You can drop your comments so that we'll pick it up when we finish the show and get back to you. You are watching Equatorial TV, Let's Talk Business, and Kaka JUMA live from Nairobi with my guest, the CEO for FedWin Kenya, Aska Josephine. Now, talking about we have most of it, we've looked at this angle. Stigmatization is the first thing. Now let's go now to business. If you just go around the globe, you will find that most disabled people have some businesses out there. What are some of the reasons and what are some of the challenges? Because when I get to you and buy the biscuits, for instance, we have guys who sells some few things here at street. You get there and you tell them, I want to do this. What are some of the things they're supposed to do to ensure that they also get into, or they are like, they do their business as normal person? Or what should the government do, all government across the world, to ensure that they also involve disabled people in doing business? Then, for instance, you can go to a certain place that is in public entity or private entity, as you've talked about the supermarkets and other things. We have some challenges that you normally face and you can't tell somebody. How do you normally manage it? Then the last, the third question is, how do you go with the situations where you are the CEO, most of people depends on you? Where do you normally get your donors and who facilitates you, and whom do you think you wish that person to come in so that you get to keep on funding the organizations? Because for those people who are watching us, Aska have funded several organizations, including women with disabilities across the country and across East Africa and other countries. He has hosted through I hope he's the assistant from the UNFPA, if I'm not wrong. So that's what normally happens. He is being supported by UNFPA, and we call upon many other organizations so that they support her, so that he gets to reach out, even if it is Africa, Asia, and other countries, for her to continue what he's doing to advocate and give the rights, and also do what we call mentorship through the efforts she has done. she's able to get a lot of number of disabled people across the country. So for instance, those people who are watching us, before we got into ask her interview, she had they had some workshops last time across Mombasa, Rotas in Nairobi, so that to empower the women. For our viewers, these people go through various psychological problems, but they don't have anyone to cry for. They don't have anyone to tell. How do you go and how can you assist to ensure that you come up with a probability so that when this person is on the set, he's also feel like other people. For instance, there is some discriminations. Apart from Asker, you'll find other people are going through very hard time psychologically, but they can't tell somebody. So ask her first, what do you think it's supposed to be done in both government globally for them to ensure that they involve the people with disability to carry out some businesses or do some investment? For instance, with this challenge, getting to bank is a very hard thing. So you will need somebody to do what? To bank for you the money. How do you encounter that? Fraudsters are there. They'll tell you, ask, give me 1 million so that I bank for you. In really thing, you find there is also trustworthy is another thing. How do you normally encounter that? Then what do you think? How do you get your funds or donors for you to run this progress with this COVID-19?
Thank you, Kaka. So let me start about the businesses before I move to my work in terms of the donor supporting us. So the deaf people that you see on the streets, they're struggling to survive because they're struggling to see what they can put on the table for their family, whatever they can, because they need the clothes, they need rent, because that's what normally everybody of us needs to do that. So what is their cry? There's no jobs. There's no job opportunities. They would like to have a nice house, they like the kids to go to good schools, but how is that possible? There is nothing. So for a person, what you need to do, I believe the devolution is very ideal for us. But it's very challenging when you come to the county governments, because when you're having these plans for stores, because you need to reserve these stalls or stores, you need to reserve for persons with disabilities. And also again, we also need to see how the person with disabilities cannot afford these very expensive items that you need to buy for resale. So also we see that like you cannot afford the goodwill that is being asked. So there's no option but to be on the streets, because what is there for the stores is very unfair. So they're out in the streets, in the cold, in the rain, struggling right there, because what we want is there is no one to fund them with seed capital. Every time city council askaris are bothering them, they're being asked for bribe, they're being taken every day, and they're accepting these bribes all the time, because you tell another friend, they ask for a bribe so that they can be let go for 200 shillings. So it's very hard for them to struggle to survive. So I think what the county government needs to do is, once you develop these good stores or stalls, you can move them from the streets without a lot of cost, like the goodwill. I believe they can be happy. You can waive some of these costs. For now, they have no option, and that is why they're there on the streets. That aside, about my organization, to tell you the truth, how do I get my funds? I really write proposals. I think I'm becoming old right now. I'm tired because I was very strong initially. I'll write proposals here, there. Right there nowadays, I just write 1, 2, or 3. I'm already tired. But people are there who depend on me, so I cannot abandon this. So I could carry on and I continue to do this. So the people who have stood with me have been short-term donors, not long-term donors. So short-term donors, one of them is UNDP, not UNFPA. Sawa. So UNDP and Kenny wa Kenya. They have different grant programs, and this is emergency funds. It's short term. Something happens, it's emergent, it needs to be sorted out, like for 3 months. If it's long, maybe 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Normally 3 to 6 months for a short term, so that you can really resolve that emergency issue. And then you propose, you accept the proposal for the next call. There's no favoritism that, oh, this is a deaf organization. It's competitive. So whoever is successful is awarded that grant. Sometimes the amount is about 1 million to 3 million Kenya shillings for different activities. You need to really be accountable. You need to share reports so that they can see, yes. And you need to have that close relationship with the donors to build the trust. The second donor, Amplify. Amplify. So Amplify has a specific program where it's based in the UK, and they focus on reproductive health, sexual reproductive health. And I think they've supported us 3 times from 2006 up to now, 3 times with the funding. And most of our focus is on advocacy on sexual reproductive health rights, to empower the deaf girls and women on their rights, reproductive rights. And also we do trainings to health workers and on disability mainstreaming, also to the police officers. And why this is key is because when a person is supposed to be given services, you need to go to the hospital, which is normally never friendly to us, because this is not normally friendly to deaf, because deaf women and girls have withdrawn. They don't want to go for these services because of the negative attitude. So interact with these healthcare workers to explain the challenges so that they can give us good service, so that more deaf people can come. Police officers, why do we engage them? Because in terms of abuse cases, you have to report to the police, but the police never understand our special needs when we do the reporting. So when you say you're feeling, no, this person, it's not true. So we are giving them an awareness so that they can understand that deaf people, yes, they're like other humans, because they can be sexually abused, they can be beaten in terms of gender-based violence. Because if you get a case, it should not be favored. You should handle it very well so that the person can get the justice they deserve. So those are the people that we engage. This year, Amplify have been supporting us, and Amkeni. So that Amkeni, we trained people during COVID. We were interacting with children in schools, because you remember that because of the lockdown, they were told to go home, and some children had an opportunity to learn online, but our deaf children were lost out of the digital learning. They were still at home. At the same time, we found that most of the deaf children, because of their vulnerability to sexual abuse, some perpetrators took advantage of that. Many deaf girls were sexually abused. So some came back pregnant. And I'm not saying this out of malice, but this is what we're facing. So we went to schools, trying to talk to the teachers, trying to talk to the learners, to explain to them what COVID was all about, to build their capacity to understand that they have a right as adolescents, so that they can know how to make informed decisions, how to say no, how their body works, what puberty means, what are the consequences. So that's what we're doing, so that they can understand and know that consequences have actions. So that is what we did through the support of Amkeni wa Kenya. Amplify, what we have done is that, like I said, we are focusing on the policy. This policy needs to be accessed to, we want learners with disabilities, we want this policy to be implemented within the schools. But we know this policy has been there for very long. It's been shelved. There's been no implementation. So why are we advocating for that? Because like in our case for the deaf learners, it's a language minority. The parents don't know sign language, they're not conversant with sign language, and they're the ones with the child, but they cannot talk to the child. The only person where they can get this information is in the school, where they also are most of the time in the year. So we are hoping that the government can implement this policy so that they can understand their sexual reproductive health rights, how their body functions, what does it mean, so that they can know that, yes, I'm a girl, What does that mean? Who's my identity? I'm a boy. Who am I? Because when I come home, maybe you find that, oh, something is growing, and then this is what you show your mother, and that's what your mother does. A boy tries to ask their mother, here, and the mom just like, I don't want to ignore, because the parents are like, no, we don't want to talk about this, because it's not the school's responsibility. So I think this policy should be implemented in school so that our learners can get the information, then to understand about their bodies, how it grows, how puberty, what happens, the changes. They need to know that if I do this, these are the repercussions. If this happens to me, this is the actions, the consequences. So that's what we've been advocating. The government needs to implement this policy on adolescent sexual reproductive health rights. We have been discussing, we've done many workshops, we try to help them to understand. We are not there yet. It's a long journey, but we hope with time that they'll understand our need and accept it. And advocating for a policy, it's not a one-day affair. It's not a one-night affair. It takes time. It takes long hours. And we hope that FEDWIN will be able to see this through until the end, so that we see that our deaf children have access to the right information, the right materials, that they can understand their reproductive health rights. The documentation, maybe a video, sign language, I believe with time, it can be done. I hope it won't take long. I'm hoping very soon that this can be possible, can be done, so that the deaf children can grow like other children with information to understand about themselves, about their identity, how they can express themselves if they've been sexually abused. Because right now, they don't know how to do it. They cannot even say anything about sexual abuse. If you say this, when you tell them that, they say, yeah, that has happened to me before, and this is being reported too late. You cannot compare a 12-year-old deaf person with a 3-year-old hearing child, because they know, they've heard on social media, people are talking, there's radio, there's TV. As they grow, the information is there, it increases their knowledge. But for a deaf child, they're in a silent world. If nobody is telling them, then they stay in that silent world, in the dark. So that is what we are trying to do as FEDWIN, to advocate for that. And thanks for Amplify for supporting us to start this work and to break that myth. And I hope other donors will also come in to support us, because Amplify project is almost ending. It was only for 1 year, 3 months to go, and we are done with the funding. And we are still getting somewhere, and we need to go there. So even Sylvia, she really helps us a lot. We have people who volunteer, whether there is no money or not, so that we can continue with our work. And we hope that we can be able to get a long-term donor who can stand with us.
Indeed, it is a very interesting and statements that bring some, let's use this word, we hope. Starting from the overview, because I wanted now to ask your engagements, specifically if you watch different medias have science interpreters now, Asker. How are you advocating for various governments to ensure that you get an interpreter in each and every institutions, that is government institutions, both locally here in Kenya, internationally, and other things? Because when you get to some countries, for instance, not well enlightened about the deaf and other people with disability, will realize there is no. For instance, now you are presenting some case in court now. What are you going to do to ensure that your views are being heard? Do you have a lawyer, or what normally happens? Then let's talk about the police now. Police doesn't have an interpreter. How do you articulate your issues then? What is your advice, or what is your take on this about the government implementations on different interpreters on government institutions / private institutions? Because I know other countries have done some good job for those countries that are supporting people with disabilities. What about those countries that are still struggling to ensure that they also put in some implementations? For instance, like here in Kenya, for your TV to operate, you're supposed to have science interpreter. That's a must. Or without that, it is a constitution passed in the government for all media. you're supposed to observe that. What is your advocating, and how are you liaising with other organizations to ensure that this is done with or without, when you'll be existing or when you're not existing? How, or what are some of the mechanisms you've put in place to ensure that the government puts all science interpreters in various government entities, apart from Kenya, other countries, and globally? How can you advocate on that, and what is your take on that?
Thank you so much, Kaka Juma. So first of all, about the interpreters in the media, yes, majority have them. How did that happen? When we were reviewing the Constitution, 2010, we made sure that we were at the forefront advocating for that Constitution. We made sure that our interests were captured. We were there. At Safari Park, we were there. Fungamano, we were there. I was a young girl, very nice. I was very young. I was there, running with the government, with the Moi government. We were there. We wanted change. I was there. Fresh from school, we struggled and struggled and struggled. And luckily, sign language was captured in the Constitution, Kenyan Sign Language, because we talked about accessible formats of information. But our Kenyan law, we have very beautiful policies, documents, which are just shelved. Because if you want to implement, you really have to start fighting for the implementation. Because if you sit in your comfort zone, you'll never enjoy these rights that are there in those documents. We waited and we waited and we waited. We saw that the government was not doing anything. TV, nothing is happening. So we started with the media. Why? Because it's a center of information accessibility. We went to the streets. Also, one MP, I think in Laikipia, that time she was a woman rep. She helped us to do this advocacy, and the media now started having interpreters during the news, KTN, Citizen, NTV, and the others, which is good. I really celebrate that yes, they have done that, but there's still another challenge because that box is so small. Because I struggle, I have to sit near my TV like this for me to see the signs. If I sit far, I'll lose the information. If they can enlarge that box, it will be good. And again, we are thinking that we need to borrow a best practice, what is happening in China. Because a deaf person, what happens is we have a deaf person who's media, so the interpreter. They work as journalists. So that's what we're doing also, that deaf people can become journalists. Yeah, we can, because it's possible. Who said we cannot? We can, because I can become a doctor. So we only just need that opportunity, and I believe that we can. So that is what we're advocating, that deaf people can be journalists, so that they can join journalism courses in schools to have that education. Because then you say, today we have a deaf newscaster, and this is how they'll say, so they'll be signing the interpreter. Tomorrow you'll have a hearing person who'll voicing, interpreter will be signing. We want that inclusiveness. So that's what we're advocating for, and I hope it can be achieved. Surprisingly, our government institutions, they don't have interpreters. Government of Kenya, I hope you're listening to me today. You don't have interpreters in institutions. You enter the office, including the office of the president, there is no interpreter. Office of the deputy president, there is no interpreter. There is no accessibility. It's very hard for us to engage with your office and your department, because when you go there, I have to bring my own interpreter. And remember, these people are working, these interpreters. They cannot volunteer forever and ever. Even at the county government level, all the way through to the national level, it's not accessible for us as deaf persons. Sometimes you go there, you find that they say there's an interpreter. When you go there, you say hello, they look at you like that. They don't know what you're saying. Maybe they know alphabets, they think they're qualified, and then if you have interpreters who are not qualified or competent. Please, before you hire these interpreters, involve the deaf community, so that I feel, yes, this person truly knows sign language, so that they know that if a person cannot sign for you or interpret, then they think we are rude because we say this person cannot, we have our right, you're infringing on our rights. It's not accessible. Very few healthcare workers, we've been able to train them on sign language, and the government always posts them. So today you train this one, next year you hear Suji, they've been transferred to where somebody new is here, and then we are back to square one each and every time. Every time you go to the hospital, I'll tell you, I will say that we want to have medical officers who can be conversant with sign language. You don't want to have interpreters there because it's a private matter. It's confidentiality. I'm sick. Maybe I have my own private things and then I come with a third party. No, I don't want that. I want to feel like another patient, one-on-one with my doctor. We interact, that I'm sick here and there, and they tell me this is what we need to do. I'm comfortable. I express myself. But if a third party is there, even myself as asker, it will be very, very hard for myself to express to the doctor. Or maybe using a pen and paper. But you see, 85% who cannot read and write what will happen, the majority of us will suffer. So I feel that if the government can look at that, maybe sign language can be at a college level for those learning medicine, for the nurses, the doctors. They can learn sign language so that they're trained, so that there's provision there. Then when they graduate, they know the basic sign language. And that is for communication purposes, not for interpretation. Interpretation is a different skill altogether. That is why Sylvia is there. That is another long journey. So some learn sign language today, they stand here and say, I'm an interpreter. I want to tell you people, you're liars. Stop lying, please. It takes long to tell you the truth. So if the government can just do that for us, then we as a deaf community, we can feel that everything is accessible. Communication is very key, and that is what we are lacking. Even at the universities, not all have interpreters. Even some colleges, not all have interpreters. So the deaf cannot go into these colleges and universities because of the breakdown communication. At the primary level, yes, I cannot comment that they will need to have interpreters because there needs to be total communication through sign language. That's why the teachers need to know sign language. They need to be conversant. Then they can teach the children who are owning their language and can develop their language and do well. Yes. So for the deaf children, there's total communication for the deaf child to develop the language. At home, they have no language development like the hearing children when they are born. The mother can teach them their mother tongue, then they can develop the language, they can go to the school. But for our deaf children, they come into school to learn the language there when they start school. Maybe that's at 4 years old, even 7 years old, that is very late. So if a teacher cannot sign, they're not conversant, that deaf children's education foundation is very weak and they don't own the language. Yes, that's what happens to us through about communication. And also when it comes to the police, we feel that the police need to learn sign language so that they're able to manage, because their laws are made and then they're being kept, but where is the communication aspect? One time they really bait me and I was not even in the wrong. So the flag was being hoisted down, and when they blow up, the people have to stand, right? I did not know that I have to stand. I did not hear the whistle being blown. My brain was far. I'm a mama, and Kenyans, we have a lot of problems. So my brain was far with my own problems. I want to reach home. I want to cook for my children. I want to do this. So I was walking. I was passing the police station. All the people had the whistle being blown. Yes, I saw people standing, but my mind was far. So I just passed. Those people on the road stood, but I passed them. After a short time, a police officer came and grabbed my coat and slapped me. And I was like, why? I was very shocked. I was like, why? I went back to the officer. My activist in me. I caught the officer by his shirt also. He slapped me and I caught him by his shirt.
And then I saw the police. I did not care. I just asked, why have you slapped me? I'm not a thief. I've not broken any law. So good thing another police officer saw the situation and knew, this is Aska. They knew me very well. They said, this is Aska, and did this. And then I said, this is what I was saying. The police said, even the police officer was shocked, this lady is deaf. But I remembered that I learned that when I went for a deaf awareness, the police said that, you have a number. So that police had a sweater. So I was fighting to take off his sweater so I can get his number. Then I was trying to do that. So we were really fighting so that I can get his number and report him. So I just left him. So the police said they are sorry, and I said that I'm not going to accept it, because if you see a person walking, don't beat them or slap them. You try and tap them on the shoulder, and then I turn, and then I know, oh, they're deaf. Maybe you've been shouting and shouting. It's not ignorance or being ignored. Just try and figure out, sometimes disability is hidden. So if you want to know that I'm deaf, after calling me first, you tap at my shoulder, and then don't be rough with me. And that is what happened. So the police understands, oh, this is who you are. So don't assume, but the first understand who the person is. And that is why we are saying that we need to involve the police in our advocacy work so that they learn sign language. Because policemen, pia, tafadhali, a few of you have learned sign language. I'm not embarrassing you when I say that. But when you learn sign language and then you start saying using that to abuse, that is very wrong. You learn sign language, you give us very good services, not to abuse us. Because you know sign language, you start using that to be arrogant, to mistreat us. No, use that to serve us very well like others. I know a number of them who we have taught sign language, and then they become enemies, very arrogant, abusive, use sign language to cause quarrel, to abuse us, including when you ask for bribes. Please stop it. Use sign language to serve us very well.
Indeed, it is an interesting and so much citing out some of the challenges the deaf normally go through. And of late, we have observed the mask now becomes a very big problem. We've just seen a lot comments flowing in until you saw our screen change to the other side. But well, that's what normally happens with the technicalities. But I will be reading for you the comments and other things to be done. So what are we doing then? We want to ensure that everything that normally takes place, it goes by. And for those people who are watching us, we are live from Nairobi, Kenya, where we are carrying out some interviews with the CEO for Fedwin Kenya, that is Aska Josephine, who is live from our TV, that's Equatorial TV. And wherever you are watching us, we are reading your comments soon. We are trying to plug in and plug out some few things to ensure that we read and get your comments where you're watching us from. So we are live here from Nairobi, Kenya, where we get a lot of engagement and a lot of some more information that we didn't know. And some people or some other people say information is power, and power is the information. Now we have learned that anyone, before you do anything, get to understand somebody. Is this Kaka Juma? How can I communicate? When you see you shouting Kaka Juma is not picking on, then it means Kaka Juma might be having some issues or some related issues. So from here, we get some of the points and some of the challenges most of deaf people have gone through and we are going through. But as we do to try to fix some issues here and there, as the countries now, we are getting to learn to know what are we supposed to do and what are we not supposed to do. And from the Ask Insightful moments and words, we will be able to come next time and see what is going on and how should we behave to ensure that we come and cope up. Not only deaf people, we have a lot. We have people with disability from various angles. And for those people who are watching us here in Nairobi, we each almost 3/4 of the hotel employees, when you get in, you'll find one of the employer knows signs language. I've moved with Aska, and they normally have specific hotels and restaurants and places to go, not to normally go. And if other countries now picks like what is happening right here in Nairobi, you will find we move and go far globally, because we Kotorio, we cover globally. We are not local, we cover locally and globally. So from there, we will be having some of the moments for us to get to understand. Very soon we will be doing some interviews on what is going on with the people. Specifically, we have a hotel here in Nairobi that their employees are only the deaf people. How that normal happens? How do they communicate with other people who are not deaf? We will be bringing in some interviews on that. Also, there is some of the hotel specifics where Aska and other guys normally get to some of the restaurants to get something to eat like lunch. They have reserved one person, either the manager or one of their waiters, to serve those people who are deaf. And that is a very good and a very big mileage that have been taken over here in Kenya. I don't know where you are watching. What is your comment? Do you have such people? How do you take them? How do you normally talk to them? There's a lot of some stigmatization that they normally undergo. How do they have some psychiatrists, psychologists? Do they undergo those mentorship? Here in Kenya, ASCA has taken that responsibility to ensure that whoever is disabled is under her. How can we support in this initiative globally? How do you go to ensure that we are almost heading to where we're supposed to go? Because they say disability is not inability. What you can do, the disabled person can do too. Ask told us first, look at what we call, look at this person as a normal person. Then from there, the disability comes later. So this is what normal happens here. We don't segregate some people. What about your country? How do we go with this? We will be giving in and we will be having ASCA on this platform after sometimes so that you get to educate us. But now, as we end this show, before we get the comments, we just wish to get the last sentiments from ASCA. How and why should this happen, and how will you have to encounter it? For instance, now we wish to get some insight from the statement from schools. For instance, she has just said they have been moving from various schools to ensure that they teach reproductive to both disabled people, and teach other things to ensure that those kids get to the line where they're supposed to. Now we have the rape cases. We have laws, and you find like a deaf when you something that, for instance, insecurity is taking place at a certain place, you can't identify. How do you normally encounter on that? Then now in school, how many cases? But she'll not give us directly, but she will be telling us how some of the challenges those disabled kids normally experience when in school. For instance, specifically here in school right now, most of them are facing challenges of mask because they don't have the specific mask for them to wear to ensure that they communicate well. And as has been elaborated first, they normally read through lips. And when they read through lips, it means that they will have to something to ensure that they are able to come up with person who can do what? When you observe through lips and you have the mask, then it means something very different. So how do you go with that? Then I saw last time the person told us that now our viewers keep on dropping your comments. We are trying to fix 1, 2, 3, 4 for me to read your comments as we come. But for now, ASCA is giving us more what normally happens in school. For instance, there is a psychological problems. Do they have the mentorship? The person who does the mentors and psychologists. Obviously, in a deaf school, there will be just automatic teachers who are deaf. Are they automatic doing what they're supposed to do? And what are some of the violence? For instance, a deaf can't identify whether you want to hurt him or her at any particular time. How do they educate, or does the civic education to those kids or the parents who might be having that what we call the family rankles or problems for them to ensure that they come up? And if you realize that most of these deaf people get to ensure that they marry the deaf. I don't know, but what normally happens to them? Are they able? Are they safe? So ask her, up to you now. You give us the last sentence as we close this chapter. We will be closing this chapter with your comments and other comments from Facebook, WhatsApp, and YouTube. You're watching Equatorial TV live from Nairobi, Kenya, and you're with me, Kaka JUMA, and CEO Asker, Fedwin Kenya, Josephine Asker. So he will be giving us more insightful statements as we keep on, and we will be reading your statements or your comments. Then we leave for other platforms to continue. So Asker, tell us what normally happens in school in terms of the violations. So in school, specifically, generally, you've been moving in schools, various schools, not one school here in Kenya. And what is your message to other countries and the world at large?
Thank you so much, Kaka JUMA. Let me start with the situations of schools, then masks, and the other things. So schools setting, maybe the question is, why am I working with deaf schools? Why am I close to these deaf learners? Because more deaf learners, they're accommodated in school. It's a boarding school. And the schools is the central place because these learners come from far. So they're within the schools. And that is why I am in the schools to reach the learners, not because of the environment, but I think it's where we can find them within the schools, where we can reach them. So we have a good network with the school heads in all these schools in Kenya so that we communicate with them so that they can allow us to enter these schools. And the children are always happy to see us because, you know, sometimes the schools understand they cannot do everything. They need some support. Because to tell you the truth, and I'm being open, parents of deaf children or parents with children with disability, especially the deaf, they don't like the disability. And like for the deaf, communication breakdown, they don't know sign language. So they leave the burdens to the teachers, to the schools. So that is how we as Fedwin come in to resolve this issue. So when I go into these schools, what do? I interact with the learners. I take them along to understand about the reproductive health. We do this age appropriate knowledge sharing, both the boys and the girls learners, because as you know, as the children grow, because our boarding schools are for both boys and girls, as they interact, as they grow into adolescence, we need to talk to them at an early age so that they can be disciplined and focus on education, focus on their books when they're in school. And they need to look at one another as brothers and sisters so that they can be each other's keepers. Because, you know, the principal cannot be there 24/7, guarding them, watching them, or the teachers to be there 24/7. Also, the family is not there. And these teachers and head teachers have a family. So we need these learners to be responsible by themselves as they grow, and then they understand what happens in the outside world and how it affects them so that they can know what to do, that these are the repercussions of your actions. These are the consequences. So we as Fedwin, that is what we are doing. Because the girl child at home, to tell you the truth, the parents will not even talk to them about menstrual hygiene, health hygiene. Sometimes the parents assume that if you're deaf, maybe you not get periods. And then, you know, at least they tell you this is a pad, this is how you wear it. They're just left there. So that is very wrong. So we as Fedwin will come in to fill in this gap, to talk to the deaf girl child, even the boy child, so that they can understand how to be responsible, how they can maintain health hygiene, body hygiene. So that is what we do as Fedwin. We counsel them because we know that we need to tell them that they need to assume that, yes, this is what is happening in the outside world. And, you know, sometimes they are very free with us. They are free to interact with us, that they laugh with us and interact with us. But we also need to tell them not everybody is for you or your friend. We need to warn them that they need to be careful because some have bad intentions or bad motives. So they need to learn how to identify. They need to be morally right or wrong. So when they have a challenge with how do they report so that they not keep silent? So these are some of the things we also talk to the parents because they need to understand their deaf children. If they bring an issue at home through science, they can try to understand. Also, the parents, also we encourage them to learn sign language so that they can be able to understand their learners, their children, so that they can communicate in case of a problem. Also, the school heads, we share with them so that we share with them what we've learned from the children, that what challenges they're facing. And I'm sorry to say, there is no professional counselor for deaf children. There is none. Because of emotions, because for testing, for GBV, but for psychological counseling, we don't have anything that's deaf friendly for us. So what we do is that we have a hearing professional with an interpreter so that they can help the deaf children during counseling sessions. And also they use in and out of schools. We try and teach them to be responsible and not to mess up their lives. Maybe they don't have work, they're frustrated, they have challenges, but they need to be responsible. So we talk a lot about mental health management, and we also want to reduce the number of single mothers that we are currently having in our community based on how they can access information on sexual reproductive health, how they can manage themselves and be responsible. About masks. This is a mask right here that I have with me. When I'm signing, you could be able to see me. Now look. A deaf-friendly mask should be clear, maybe like a face shield, so that or a clear mask so that you can be able to see and lip read. Because without lip reading, communication becomes very boring because also it's hard to understand. Some signs are almost the same, but when a person is signing and then you look at the mouth movement, and then with the language you understand, this is what they're saying. It's easy for a deaf person to pick up on what you're saying. Because if you have this mask that we have, we get stuck. So we've been advocating to the National Council and the government of Kenya, they need to have deaf-friendly masks because we don't have them. We are stuck with this. We have no choice, but it is well. We need to protect ourselves from COVID, and these are the regulations. We hope that one time everything will change, because if you see developed countries like in Europe, they've done that. They've by far, because they have the concern for everything. Even if it is traveling, you'll get interpreters there. If something happens, everything is changed so that everybody is equal, nobody is discriminated against. But in Africa, our continent, it is not for all, because to tell you the truth, it's very, very challenging for us. So about mobile phones, how do we use mobile phones as deaf people? Through texting, WhatsApp. We also have video calls. So I video call my friend and I can sign. And that is how we communicate. Do not call us, please don't call us. Because if you call, maybe I give another person like Sylvia who can answer, but please text me or use WhatsApp. About marriage, yes, deaf and deaf marry one another. Even a deaf person can marry a hearing person. It depends with your heart. Because many deaf person marry one another. Why? Because of the communication accessibility. It's easier because we can both sign. We understand one another well. Because we also date. We date like any other person. We have sweethearts like any other people. We divorce even, we separate, we fight, even, steal somebody else's boyfriend or girlfriend. It's there. We even give birth to children. We live together, or we separate. Maybe you go with your children and you move back to your home. The world is the same way with the world of the deaf. It's not new. Yes, deaf people marry each other and they don't give birth to deaf children unless they have a genetic family history. If there is no, all the children will be hearing. Because when a hearing guy dates a hearing man, learn a sign language, please. Many times they do. They learn sign language. So when you're learning sign language, you can communicate well. Or hearing girl marrying a deaf guy, the Loifu learn sign language, then they can communicate very well, give children and they care very well, no problem. And divorce, come back together, whatever happens in your world, also in my world, it happens the same way. There's no difference.
Indeed, it is a very wonderful and interesting stories to capture and to come up with. But because of time, we are heading to our end of the session. I just want to ask a platform to give us how, if you want to find her, where do you find her on both social media and other media platform for you to be engaged and we keep on talking to each other. You can search for my Facebook account, JUMA, and drop there the comments, and we will be responding to your comments immediately after we get to what we call the insightful. It was a very pleasure, and thank you for meeting us. This is Equatorial TV. I was your host, JUMA. So ask, just give us some of the how do people can get you. Sure.
So please kindly contact me at +254 726 623 758. SMS or WhatsApp. Don't call me, please. And email, you can find me at Aska Josephine, which is one word, askajosephine@gmail.com.
Indeed, it was a very insightful statement and very wonderful statement. Here from Nairobi, Kenya, I don't have much to say. We were live from Nairobi, Kenya, and back to studio. I was your host, JUMA, plus our CEO, Fedwin Kenya, Aska Josephine. Thank you for watching and keep on checking our program as we keep on moving with other things. Thank you so much. From Nairobi, Kenya, I'm JUMA.